This is kind of a touching day for me. We're next to our police memorial, and I have two very close friends that are on that memorial. I want to introduce just a few of our electeds before we get started. We have Supervisor Aaron Hannigan, District 1. Krishna Abrams, our District Attorney. Tom Barti, representing Senator Bill Dodd's office. Stephen Hallett, representing Monica Brown's office. And did I miss any other electeds? I hope not. But again, thank you for being here this afternoon. Crime touches all of us. It touches all of us in many ways. It could be even the most insignificant crimes, such as a vandalism, getting your car keyed, or somebody flattening your tire, to the ultimate of losing a loved one or a friend or someone that you know. It's very, very sad when this happens. It hurts us all. It affects us not only physically but emotionally. And to that end, I wrote a proclamation that I'd like to present to Mr. Angel Aguilar. Angel, if you could step up for a moment, please. And this is a proclamation addressing National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 2nd through the 8th, 2017. Whereas National Victims' Rights Week is recognized across the country on April 2nd through the 8th every year, and whereas today we stand together with unity, strength, and justice by supporting victims of crime in Vallejo, and whereas under the Crime Victims' Rights Act of October 2004, which states in part that victims' rights must be enforced, that there be a compliance with victims' rights and laws, and whereas under federal law, victims have the right to be protected from the accused, notified if the accused is paroled, released, or escaped from custody, and whereas victims have the right to be heard in proceedings involving release, plea, sentencing, or any parole proceedings, and whereas victims have the right to fully and timely restitution as well as proceedings free from unreasonable delay, and whereas victims be treated with fairness and respect for their dignity and privacy. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Bob Sampine, Mayor of the City of Vallejo, and the Vallejo City Council, recognizes and supports victims' rights and the week of April 2nd through the 8th as National Crime Victims Week. Signed by me, Bob Sampine, Mayor of the City of Vallejo, and the Vallejo City Council.
Just wanted to thank everybody for coming out today, and this is a really big honor for us. Didn't really have much prepared today, but I think this is just a really important reflection of what we're trying to do out in the community and really serve the community and serve victims of crime. That's our mission at the Solano Family Justice Center, and we just appreciate all the support. And we're all ambassadors here, so what we learn and our experiences we take out to the community, and that's what our duty is as citizens. So just wanted to thank everybody, and very proud of this. Thank you.
As we move on here, I'd like to introduce Krishna Abrams, our District Attorney of Solano County.
First of all, welcome. Thank you for coming out in this weather. And we are here to recognize National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Today, we are here to honor those who have lost their lives to violence. These were not people that we read about in the newspaper. These were people that we knew either professionally or personally. They were our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors, and our loved ones. And let's remember today, not those who took their lives, but let's remember our loved ones for their courage and their strength and their love for life. That their memory will remain in our hearts forever. We are here to recognize, as Bob Sampine said, the fundamental rights of all crime victims and survivors, those whose life has been affected by crime. Each and every one of them embarked on a journey that was not of their choosing. And we must stand here together today and be vigilant in providing them support, help, and hope to get them through the most trying of times. Let's make sure that we always listen to their story, their anger, their frustration, their sadness, and their grief. Victims of crime must always be treated with dignity and respect. And I've been doing this for 21 years, and the one thing I will say, every victim, every survivor that I've met with and dealt with during my 21 years, they want to be treated with dignity and respect, and we owe them that. And so I'd also like to say that we need to help them, especially as prosecutors and those in the criminal justice system, to help them navigate through that system. We must make sure that they always have a voice and that their voice is always heard. So together here today, let's recognize, as the theme of Victims Crime Week this year is strength, resilience, and justice. Let's recognize and honor all survivors and victims' strength and their resilience as we seek to do justice every day. And let's pledge to honor the rights of crime victims and survivors each and every day, not just today, not the first week of April, because crime doesn't happen 8 to 5, and crime victims' rights aren't just recognized in the month of April. They should be each and every day of the year. And I believe that we cannot truly obtain justice unless victims are always treated with dignity and respect, and they're always treated fairly and justly. Thank you.
I'd next like to invite up Supervisor Eric Hannigan. Thanks, Eric.
Tend to be a little taller than most. On Tuesday of this week, the Solano County Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution recognizing the week of April 2nd through the 8th of this year as National Crime Victims' Rights Week in Solano County. And I'd like to read that resolution for you. So every year, National Crime Victims' Rights Week revisits crime victims' decades-long struggle to achieve justice. And to the founders of the victims' rights movement, justice meant every victim would receive the help they need in the aftermath of a crime. And this year's theme, Strength, Resilience, Justice, recommits our nation to realizing this ideal. And during a one-year period, 7.5 million people ages 18 or older in the United States were stopped, and only 44% of victims of violent crimes reported the crime to the police. And in 2014, victims aged 12 or older experienced a total of 150,420 rapes or sexual assaults, and 113,000 people over the age of 65 were victims of violent crime. In the most recent report issued in 2014 for crimes both reported and not reported to police, the total economic loss to victims for property crime amounted to $15.5 billion. The Solano County Crime Victim Assistance Unit worked with over 637 new victims and witnesses to homicide, robbery, adult and child sexual assaults, domestic violence, stalking, elder abuse, child molestation, and physical abuse cases in the calendar year of 2016. In order for the unit to function, it is supported by grant funding through the California Emergency Management Agency. And now therefore be it resolved that the Solano County Board of Supervisors does hereby recognize the Solano County Crime Victim Assistance Unit for its accomplishments and proclaims April 2nd through the 8th of 2017 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And this was signed by the chair of our board, Supervisor John Vasquez. I really don't think there's much more that I could add to the statements that Mayor Sampayan and our district attorney, Krishna Abrams, talked about in terms of the victims and what victims are looking for and the help they need to continue on, particularly those of victims of violent crime and those who lose loved ones in the process. We all know somebody, and hug them. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hannigan. I would also like to invite up Pastor Vic Jenkins, who will lead us in a prayer for victims of crime and a few words of encouragement. Pastor?
We've already heard many words of encouragement from, and there's a word that we've used, that word victim. We'd like us to just consider what that is, because there's a common thread that draws us here today, and that is the fact that all of us have experienced, I would suspect each one of us have our story of our own relationship with victims, or as myself, have been a victim of a crime that's been committed where we've lost a loved one or where we've experienced a crime. So that's that common thread that draws us here together, and we're united in that. And we're 100% behind the ideas that are proclaimed in the proclamations that we have. And they're not just words. There's a spirit that draws us here together. Each of us are in the position of moving beyond being a victim and doing something about it. A commitment to that moving beyond and healing. And that's in the discussions that I've had with people over the years since the time when I lost my daughter as a victim of a crime. There's been the constant awareness that we're moving towards healing. And that's the most encouraging thing that I can say to those who've experienced that loss, is that we can move through this as long as we are committed to that healing. And so as I invite you to join with me in a prayer here, we're committing to that idea that we find in our program, that we're moving beyond separation and division and fear, and moving into an awareness that we have strength, and that we have resilience, and that there is justice in that. Marian Wright Edelman is an activist and the director and inspiration behind the Children's Defense Fund. She has a quote that I'd like to share with you before we join together in prayer. She said, "The challenge of social justice is to evoke a sense of community, that we need to make our nation a better place just as we make it a safer place." She understands that we cannot be divided, that we cannot have the greatest crime that we have committed against us is to invoke fear and separation, and to see us as being alone in our fight against crime. We can only fight this, and the best way to fight this is by realizing our community and the strength in our community. So it's important to remember that as we seek to end violence, that we are called to remember that we are connected as individuals, as a community, and certainly as a nation. And it's with this in mind that I invite you to join with me now in a prayer of commitment. So could we join together now? We affirm in this prayer to God, our Creator, great Spirit of life, compassion, and justice, our commitment to honoring and remembering those that we have lost, those who have been victimized by crime, those in our community who have felt separated and alone, those who are living in fear, and to realizing and recognizing that in this prayer we are affirming strength. Strength in remembering, strength in our resilience, and in meeting each challenge and the changes that these crimes bring into our lives, and to acknowledging and to remembering those who fight for us, for justice, for bringing justice, removing the criminals from our society, and working to restore justice into all of our lives, into this community and into our world. And we affirm our gratitude for this day, for each person who is here, committed to joining in this prayer for the strength, resilience, and justice that we bring to this community. We are grateful for the gift of healing and peace in this moment and in each moment to come. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor. I'd next like to invite up some of the victims' voices. And I'd like to ask Rita Edmonds-Norris, if she'd like to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here today. Get my glasses on. My name is Rita Edmonds-Norris, and I'm here to represent the Solano Homicide Survivors Support Group. I am the mother of a murdered son. That is the phrase I would never imagine that I would be using to describe myself. On June 16, 1993, my son Chad Norris walked out the door at a little before 9 p.m. He gave me a hug and a kiss and said, "I love you, Mom, don't worry, I'll clean my room tomorrow." I remember the sound of his cowboy boots as he walked across the floor. I never heard that sound again after that night. At approximately 9:47, I received a frantic call from my son's friend Kevin telling me that I needed to come to the hospital. I remember screaming into the phone, "Were you boys in a car accident?" And he kept saying, "Just come to the hospital, just come to the hospital." Finally he said, "Chad's been shot." I don't remember how I got to the hospital. I do remember thinking as I drove, "Shot? There has to be a mistake. Chad has never touched a gun. He didn't like guns. He wouldn't even go duck hunting with his father." This made no sense to me. I remember running through the emergency room doors. I remember hearing people sobbing. I remember a doctor telling me that my son was dead. I remember spinning around the room and screaming and crashing into things. I remember a nurse taking me into a room where my son Chad was lying on a gurney. I remember touching him and trying to feel if there was warmth in his body. I remember laying myself across him and trying to keep that warmth from leaving. I remember looking into his beautiful blue eyes that sparkled so much when he was alive, and now they were lifeless. And I don't remember much after that. My son had been shot to death in a senseless act of violence by two strangers. The death of a loved one to a violent crime defies description when it comes to the human experience. It is more than grief, it is trauma grief. I know that on June 15th, 1993, I was Rita, the mother of three wonderful sons. The oldest, Chad, being a beautiful, spirited, kind, loving, light up a room kind of a young man with hopes and dreams and plans to go to college, with a beautiful girlfriend and lots of friends who he adored and who adored him. 2 brothers who looked up to him and depended upon him for guidance. On June 16, 1993, I became someone else. I became the mother of 2 surviving sons and the mother of a murdered son. I not only watched my world blow apart in a million pieces, but I had to experience the sorrow and the pain of watching my other 2 sons' lives come apart. They had to experience the loss of their mother in a way as their mother that they knew was gone from that day forward. The man who murdered Chad murdered more than one person that day, and I've often said that if a murderer were sentenced for all the people that they murdered that day, they would probably never get out of prison again. I wrote a poem about navigating the grief of Chad's loss and the terrain that we have to travel. I likened it to crawling through broken glass. When the glass first breaks, the terrain is impossible to navigate. We crawl across these huge shards of glass called loss, pain, fear, grief, disbelief, anger, impossible sadness, brokenness. They are always there. The only way you can really navigate them is to crawl right through them. There's no way of getting around the grief that you are experiencing. They are huge and sharp, and they are jagged, and they tear you apart at the beginning of your grieving process. When a loved one is murdered, in a violent crime, and I will use the phrase I will not use the phrase when you lose a loved one, because we did not lose them. They were taken from us. When your loved one is a victim of a homicide, the world becomes a difficult place for you to seek solace. People have a hard time with what to say to you. People have a hard time understanding what you're going through. You remind them of horrible things that they don't want to have to think about. You remind them how fragile life is. It's not that they don't care about what happened to you, it's just that they cannot relate and cannot find the words. This is where I want to tell you about our support group. We are called the Solano Homicide Survivor Support Group, and we call ourselves survivors, not victims. The support group is facilitated by myself and 2 other mothers of murdered sons, and Dr. Paz from Kaiser, who is a psychiatrist. He's there to hold us together unless it's when we start to have a little falling apart time. In essence, we are all facilitators in this group because we work together to help each other navigate this ridiculously hellish terrain called trauma grief. It is a safe place where we can feel free to express our deepest and our most painful emotions. We help each other navigate this terrain of jagged, broken shards of pain, and as we crawl back and forth through it and help each other through it, we break those shards down. They become smaller. Sometimes they even become dust, and it's more manageable for us to handle. And so, as a group, we get each other through this, and it's a place where we feel safe to share our most horrific feelings and pain. Our next meeting will be next Tuesday, April 11th. They are always the second Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. Anyone who has experienced the death of a loved one to homicide or is a survivor of an attempted homicide is welcome. In closing, I would like to thank Krishna Abrams, our district attorney, for graciously providing us with the Family Justice Center to hold our meetings, as well as Lori Frank for providing us with flyers for our group. And lastly, I would like to thank Mr. C.C. Yen of Yen McDonald's in our community for providing us every month for the last 4 years with a donation of coffee and cookies, which is kind of helpful at times, because we have needs to eat cookies. The theme of National Crime Victims Week this year is strength, resilience, and justice. For strength as a group, we as survivors of homicide gain strength in supporting each other. For resilience as a group, we help each other in learning how to adapt to the traumas and the tragedies we have experienced, and to bounce back to the best life we can achieve after what has happened. For justice, we try to create an environment where we facilitate healing for ourselves, for our families, for our friends, for each other, and for our communities. We work towards justice for other crime victims. Thank you, and now I would like to introduce another survivor, Ebony Antoine.
Hello everyone, my name is Ebony Antoine Rojas, and I lost my husband. Corey Rojas, May 13, 2010. But what was worse than me losing my husband was my children losing their father. How do you explain to a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 10-year-old that they won't see their father again? Needless to say, this has been a very painful journey. And what made it worse is that no one was ever held accountable. I needed to make sense of what I was going through, so I dug deep. I attended a lot of support groups, therapy, and attended church regularly. Problems arose very often for a single mother of 3, and I searched for a lot of resources through our government agencies and found very little help. It was very frustrating dealing with the tragic death of my husband, as well as dealing with life on a day-to-day. But I couldn't quit. I had to survive because my children were watching and they depended on me for everything. Life has been rough, but I know that all things work together for the good of those who love God and to those who are called according to His purpose. I decided to create my own nonprofit. It's called Broken by Violence. It's a bereavement support group for victims of tragedies. Our goal is to make sure that our physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional needs are being met. We have monthly meeting groups. My goal is to network with the community to be able to have child care assistance, which is some of the things that I encountered that was really hard for me. We do counseling referrals, we have workshops. The whole goal is just to make sure that you survive through a tragic loss. I thank everyone for coming out. I look forward to networking in the community to make Broken by Violence bigger and definitely to help people who have lost loved ones. I want to close with my favorite scripture. It's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to Him, and He shall make your path straight. I thank you guys for the opportunity, and be encouraged, because life does get better.
And now I would like to introduce Isabel Reyes.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you guys for coming out today on this cold day. So my name is Isabel Reyes. I am the mother of Eric Reyes. On Saturday morning, February 6th, my life changed forever. My son was murdered in broad daylight on Springs Road. He was shot twice in the back while driving. Eric was robbed of the opportunity to fulfill his dreams. Eric was a senior at Jesse Bethel High School. Eric maintained a 4.0 grade point average, and he even earned the superintendent's honor roll, all while working part-time at Kohl's department store. Eric was full of life, goals, dreams, and ambitions. There is no greater pain than losing a child, especially in such a violent way, senseless violent way. It's unfortunate that there's so many of us mothers who have to deal with this tragedy. But I won't be a victim. I won't be a victim, I'm a survivor. And because I am surviving, in my son's memory, I have launched an Eric Reyes Foundation. And our mission is to help education, community involvement, and safety awareness in our community. The Eric Reyes Foundation website could be found and the Facebook page as well. I would like to add to Rita's support group. I joined the support group in the summer of last year because I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one. I didn't understand. I was going through the court system and I thought it was only happening to me. But going to the court system, because the mothers there are different stages. You know, some of them are going through parole hearings, some of them are done with that, and I'm just in the process of it. So going there, speaking to the mothers there, helped me understand that I'm not alone, helped me understand the court system. Because I don't know the court system. I never been arrested. My boy's never been arrested. His father never been arrested. We don't know how the system works. I still don't understand how it works. And if it wasn't for their support group that I have, that mothers have been through it, that are walking me through all of this, they're helping me understand how this works and how the system works. One example I could give you guys from the system, I went to the support group. I was so upset because I had this DA and they changed my DA, and I was upset because I thought, well, they don't care about my son's case. Why are they changing the DA? I didn't know how the system worked. And I went to the support group and they all said, oh, that's how it worked. They do it all the time. They had 3 DAs, you know. It was nothing. So after me learning that, but at the beginning I was so stressed out. I was making calls everywhere trying to find out why are they doing this to me. I thought it was towards me because I don't know the system. And going to the group, the mothers helped me understand that's how the system works. They all have 3 different DAs. They all have 2 different DAs. And I'm on my 3rd DA, which I love. She's great. I hope I get to keep her, but I love her. But that's how this is, you know, unless you go to these groups, unless you have law behind you, I mean, the groups can really help you. They help me a lot get through this. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for having me.
I want to thank these brave ladies for sharing their passionate stories with us. And to that end, I would like to invite our pastor back up for a moment of silence. Those of you who don't have candles, please find one if there's some available. And Pastor Jenkins, if you would, please. Thank you, sir.
And thank you for reminding us through your stories of your strength and resilience and your commitment to justice. And, you know, a moment of silence has become such a tradition, and it's a time for us to recognize that we are not alone, that we're together in our support of these stories. That we're in support of this idea that brings us all together and sees us as a community, not divided, not living in fear. And in these days when our nation seems to be so divided and apart and separated, that we are committed to being a community and being together. Before we enter this moment of silence, I want you to urge you to make this your own time to offer up your prayer of support in your own words and to remember these ideas that we've had expressed today. There's this quotation that I would like to make before we go into the silence. It's from the 13th century mystic and poet Rumi. It goes like this. It says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. And so out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. This is the field of the heart. And let's join together now. I'll meet you there, in this place in the heart, in this moment of silence that we take to remember. And let's do this now in the silence. And in this moment, we are truly one. We are a community committed. Compassion and love and justice. Peace be with each one of us.
Pastor Jenkins. Very touching, very moving. I truly appreciate your words. I want to thank all of you for coming to this event today. I want to thank our survivors and the survivors that are in the audience. This is truly a difficult moment for all of us. I reflect back on people that I've known that have become victims of crimes. I look at our police memorial here where we've lost officers. I think back to my time when I was a police officer, when I was a detective working in our Crimes Against Persons section, where I did work homicides, and how these crimes just touched me significantly. I can remember every single one of them. I can remember families. I want to thank all of you again. There's so many people that worked so hard today to make this event happen. I want to thank our supervisor who were represented today, Supervisor Hannigan. I want to thank our deputy DA, or I'm sorry, our DA, not deputy DA, our DA. I want to thank the Homicide Survivor Support Group. I want to thank the Justice Center. Thank you very much. And to our pastor who brought us spiritual guidance. But most of all, I want to thank all of you, our survivors, for remembering, for bringing this to light. Let us all remember. Thank you very much.